Okay, people. So I am joined by David Schalko. Schalko, is that how you?
Yeah, that's the right pronunciation.
All right, splendid. David Schalko, who is the director, co-writer, producer, all around talented individual, to talk about his new TV show, Kafka. David, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Oh, no worries at all. I mean, I really was intrigued by this because, like, Kafka is such a kind of an enigmatic figure, right? You hear about him, and his work is so like kind of abstract, but it's hard to really get to grips with some of these people because they lived, you know, you say a long time ago, but technically it's not that long ago, but there's still that, from now it's easy to find out about people, but back then there's, only so much information out in the world. So yeah, it was intriguing to get this, but what brought you to Kafka and made you think, let's make a TV series about him?
That's a long story, actually, but to cut it short, I read the biographies of Reiner Stach 10 years ago. It's three books, 3,000 pages about the life of Kafka. And I was really very enthusiastic about it because those were the best biographies I've ever read. Not just because it's about Kafka, but also the way it's written and also the essayistic parts and what you learn about history and it's such a good documented life because we know every day about where he have been and because the diaries are um, um, there are so many diaries and every day we know where Kafka have been and what he has done and Stach did such a great work because he also did the connection between the literature and his personal life and out of which situation there was literature and all those things. And as I thought, if I would ever do a biopic, I would do it with those biographies because it's so interesting. Because normally you have the life of writers and it's a chronic in a chronicle way how they live, but you never have the connection to what they have written and why they have written it and how the ideas came and everything like that.
Mm, okay. Now yeah, that's interesting. So did they essentially become the foundation of the show? Those
Who?
biographies?
Yeah, exactly. Everything is based on those biography, and Daniel Kehlmann wrote the scripts. We concepted it together based on the biographies, and then all the dialogues Daniel wrote. And but he tried not to like nearly everything that Kafka said is something he has had written somewhere. That's very important because um, we have been very arrogant at the end of the day to write something in the style imitating Kafka. I mean, and some things are from diaries, some things are from letters, a lot of letters, of course, um, and um, that's also something that Stach did. That because of him, we know which situation led to the literature. For example, the metamorphosis. We know it's because the father called Ishak Löwy a venom, an insect, and out of this, the idea came up. He came up with the idea of the metamorphosis and things like that. That was the most important thing for us, actually.
Well, yeah, that's great to hear, right? Because I think a problem sometimes with biopics is that we have these pieces about people, and there's certain facts that you know, and you'd be like, okay, yeah, that's legit. But then it gets into certain things, and the person's always painted in this light where they've never done anything wrong, or they've never had a bad or malicious thought.
Exactly.
And it's always a bit like, really? Are we really? Also, when you consider like the time that person comes from, it's like when they do things about the royal family here, right? we know,
There's
the
a
royal
dark side.
yeah, we know this, but they've never said anything off key. They've never said a racist thing. They're always great. They're always upholding the right of mankind, and you're just like, no, that's that's rubbish, man. So the fact that like all of Kafka's dialogue is essentially taken from Kafka, that I think really sets this, on that upper echelon, right? Because other works don't do that.
Yeah, we don't know how Kafka spoke anyway, and it's because it's all about his literature that was very important for us, that what he talks is part of his literature as well. And but it shouldn't sound like it's literature. That's the other thing, because it should sound like a natural way of talking. And the second thing that was very important for us, and maybe this is also interesting that it's not told in a chronicle way. We chose for every episode, we chose a different perspective, and it shows a complete different Kafka at the end of the day in every episode, because the friends, as in the first episode, this is about the friendship of Max Brod and him, who saved all his work after he died, is a completely different Kafka than the lover Kafka, or the son Kafka, or the employee in the insurance company Kafka. And there is no real Kafka, because these are all different Kafkas, and you have this mosaic, this puzzle, and at the end of the day, you have a bigger part of the truth maybe than you did before, but you never have the whole Kafka, of course, because that's impossible.
But it's realistic if you think about it, right? Yes. Because oftentimes we're different with the different people we hang around with.
Yeah, we have roles.
The person we show our, our love, right? Our partner, that's maybe a different person that we show our work colleagues, right? So everyone has these different sides, these different facets. So it was very interesting to see that you have broken it down into like Dora, Melina, Max, The Office, Family, right? I think that is a very, unique approach to something like this. Like, is that how the biographies were set out?
No, the biographies were kind of told in a chronicle way. It's not from different perspectives. But you cannot tell everything that's in the biographies, because you have to decide what do I leave out, or you have to select which parts of Kafka's life you tell, because otherwise it would have taken like 12 episodes. And not everything is interesting about the life of Kafka, because it's not such a spectacular life at the end of the day. What makes it spectacular is the literature that came out of the life, actually. And so we choose primarily things that were connected to the literature and led to big literature. And this was maybe the criteria for the selection we did, and said Felice was very important for his literature, for example, not only because of the love letters, which are probably the most famous love letters in the history of literature, but also because the trial she made to him, that she said, "Why are you not marrying me?" led to the trial as a book, the feeling of accusation, and And shame is a big issue for Kafka, of course, in all his literature, and that also shows his dark side, maybe, that it's always about shame and hiding things, and of course the horror of bureaucracy and things like that. So there are a lot of dark sides in Kafka's literature, and a big dark side of his life he put into his literature. And that was the interesting segment and the things that we were interested in.
Yeah, no, I watched the first episode and I found it very riveting, right? I didn't realize that there was a kind of Anne Frank kind of connection with Kafka, right? Because I think it's purported that her diaries were edited by her father, right? And changed and that kind of thing. And I didn't realize that the same was with Kafka's work, that Max edited his work, right? And so it's like, oh, what did he take out? What did he alter? Like, did he alter anything? You know what I mean? Those kind of things I'd never heard before, right? So it was interesting watching it and getting these, you know, interesting kind of looks behind the curtain about Kafka and his relationships with these people.
I think, I mean, that's true. I mean, he edited the diaries, for example, but he tried to protect people. He says an interesting sentence in the series, and it's also in his diaries, where he said, for you, it was a book. For us, it was our life. And so he tried to protect things nobody should know about people, because he tried to protect him when it came to betrayal or something like that. And he got accused for that, of course, a lot of criticism for that after the death of Kafka, because on the other hand, he made him famous, and he was responsible that the whole work survived, and he took it with the last train out of Prague when the Nazis came, and he always put the work of Kafka beyond his own, and which is a very altruistic act as a friend, actually. But also what he did is he edited the diaries, and they said he has no competence to do that because he's not a literature scientist or whatever. But he said he had the right to do it because he was his best friend, and he was not doing bad things because he just did a little editing. So it's not and you all can see it now because there are unedited editions of the diaries as well. So you see the work he has done was not so bad, actually.
But I do feel that is kind of a fair thing, though, because yeah, it is their lives, right? And the fact that, you know, not only was he Kafka's best friend, but also he was there.
Exactly.
Right. So a literature agent isn't there. So they don't know the sentiment in which something was written, or, you know, how that event took place, where, you know, Max would. So I think that gives Max a leg up in editing, in publishing that work.
Absolutely. And he didn't hide his editing, because you can see it in the diaries what he did. So it's not a hidden editing. And I think the same way you do. I mean, he had the right because it was firsthand, and he knew the circumstances and everything, and he knew the people. And but that's the conflict, because all the literature agents and journalists, they say we have the right to know everything because every word of Kafka is interesting and for us. On the other hand, he was accused that he published the diaries because Kafka maybe didn't want them to be published because it's his private life at the end of the day. Always there's always a conflict at the end, and but I think at the end of the day, it's important that everything is published, because Kafka was probably the most important writer in the 20th century, because there was no writing like that before Kafka, but a lot of imitators after Kafka, which are the sons and daughters, in a literal way, of Kafka.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's very true. And I thought the way that you laid all of that out in that first episode was really well done, right? Because we had the past, we had like the present, and the earlier past. You know what I mean? So you get all of these different iterations, and then when Max is being interviewed and being like, how can you do this? There's not these, elaborate like monologues. It's just these honest responses that kind of feel, yeah, that would come from Max. From everything we've seen, you'd be like, yeah, that feels like Max how he would respond in that situation.
Exactly, because those are emotional answers. For example, the interviewer says, if there would have been any situation, if it wouldn't have been easier for Brod not to be befriended with Kafka, to write about his work, and he answers, there couldn't be one situation I can think of that would have been better not to be befriended with Kafka, and that's the thing, because he was the one who, even when Kafka was not writing, he has seen in Kafka a big writer, and he was always motivating him to write. And he was the one who brought his books to publishers during his life, because the Metamorphosis and things like that, they were published, and Kafka was not a complete unknown writer. That's also a Kafka cliché. That's not true. Because it's not like Van Gogh, who never saw the painting. There were a couple of books that were published, and especially in the writer's world, a lot of people read him and admired him, like Rilke or Musil or Werfel and all those guys. So they all knew that he is a very big writer. But he really got famous worldwide, of course, and that was when, in the 50s, over America, when Schopen published all the Kafka books.
Yeah. Now, when you were going through, like, constructing this, going through the biographies, and did, like, I should say, was 6 episodes always the fault, or did that come from deconstructing what you had, and you realized actually it makes sense to go with 6 rather than say 8 or 10 or 12?
Well, it always has also something to do with financing, of course, and
Yeah.
that's the pragmatic truth at the end. We knew that it's not possible to finance more than 6 episodes. We also thought that 6 episodes are a good length and a good volume to tell this segment of Kafka's life, because the main things of his life are in those 6 episodes. I think even if we would have had the money to make 8, I think we would have decided that 6 is the perfect. It doesn't make sense, because you have 3 relationships. You have the insurance company, you have the father and Zionism and his Jewish family, his relationship to being Jew. It's in one episode, and you have the friendship with Max. So I think everything that we would have added to those 6 episodes would have felt not like that substantial like those 6 would have felt, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Because I feel sometimes things can outstay their welcome, you know. So it's finding that perfect length, right? That perfect moment to be Cascanza, as it were, and leave the room. And yeah, so it sounds like you got it right.
Yeah, I hope so. You never know, of course. But for us,
Well,
it's
no, but as I say, you know, I really enjoyed the first episode. Right, I'm frustrated I can't watch more. Really.
oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's so I've got bad eyesight, and with it being subtitled, it makes it very difficult
Yeah,
to read. And
yeah.
I found also it's like with a lot of things, a lot of times subtitles don't have a solid background behind them,
Mhm.
right? So you lose the text within the you know the body of the show.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so yeah, it just was, you know, there's a lot of pausing and rewinding and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
So
that sounds like
like
work. Yeah.
yeah, so to watch all 6, I think I'd just be like,
Oh,
a
okay.
zombie.
And they speak a lot in this series, so
Yeah, yeah. So, but you know, as I said, I really enjoyed the first episode. So if I didn't have an issue, I would have watched the whole thing. You know,
yeah.
so I think yeah, people will definitely, because you know, if it wasn't good, right? I would have just been like, you know, I would have hit up Stacy and said, "Hey, I can't. Nah, I tried, can't do it. Let's go do something
Yeah,
else." But you know,
yeah.
the fact that I wanted to watch this, right, is yeah, I think it speaks to the fact that it will resonate with people. You know, I think they will be really intrigued by it all.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's very rare that you have the possibility to do a biopic about a writer. It's not very popular at the end of the day. And especially when the people hear the name Kafka, they often get afraid, like in the school, when, oh shit, Kafka. And they have like the dark cliches of Kafka, and it's hard to read, and and which is not true at the end of the day. There's a lot of humor when you read Kafka, and a lot of absurdity, and also it's a very modern literature with a lot of issues that we know from that are also relevant today, actually, and that's a good thing about it, I think.
No, I think that's very true, you know. So it's, I mean, because of that, right? Because of the perceptions around Kafka, like, what were the difficulties in bringing this to life? I mean, was it easy to, I mean, actually, it's never easy to get funding, but did you find it harder than other projects because of the name Kafka?
Yeah, it definitely was harder because it took like 10 years, and a lot of streamers, they wanted to do it, that they cancel it again, and it all has, of course, to do with the angst of Kafka, because they say, yeah, the people are not interested in writers, especially not in avant-garde writers like Kafka, and everything. The whole plot is very complicated, and it's not told in a linear way, and things like that. And it's very hard to get a connection to Kafka because he's like an alien, actually. So, and this all makes it not so easy to finance that. But we got great actors, and especially you got very connected to Max as his best friend. I think that's the empathic connection you get to. And then this is in the second, third episode where you also see the books of Kafka's and parts of the stories of books that is like little films then that are connected to the life. So it's done in a very special way, I think. And I think this could be interesting because it's not like a typical Netflix series or like a typical Amazon or streamer series. And it's something that has a strong style of public TV, maybe, kind of, in a good sense, I think. So I was very glad at the end of the day that the German public TV was the financer, because that's the place and the channel where it feels good that it's there, because that's at the end of the day their legitimation being a public TV and being financed by the public to do things like that, because it's not about success or things like that. It's about relevance and about this is a thing you can show in schools, and it's maybe your first contact to Kafka as a pupil when you're in Austria or in Germany, for example. And then it was very important for us to take away the angst that when the people think about Kafka, it's always dark and heavy literature and things like that. So we wanted to show the humor in Kafka as well, and the whole series has humor, and this was also very important for us.
Well, you know what? I think, right, this kind of shows that, you know, because there are trepidations with certain people's works, right? You've got oh my gosh, it's Tchaikovsky, not Tchaikovsky, is Tchaikovsky?
Tarkovsky.
Yes, Tchaikovsky, right? Like, he's another one where people are like, oh, that's so heavy, right? But I feel the work itself is never really heavy in the fact that it's impenetrable, but sometimes the people who are teaching it, right, who are curating it, create this force field around it. So it's the entry into something. And this could be that great entry for people in schools or universities into the world of Kafka. Because, you know, I think watching this, you're so intrigued. You're like, oh, yeah, I wanna check out the trial. Right? I want to check out Metamorphosis. So, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You want to delve into it because the way you framed it all, right? So I think this would be, you know, a perfect vehicle for that, to start those new conversations.
Exactly. That was the reason to do it at the end of the day, that you have the longing to take a Kafka book and read it. Because that's the thing, what it's about. It's about the literature of Kafka. And if you know a couple of background things about the literature, it's also more interesting to read it, maybe. Because if you know why he wrote the trial or the castle or whatever, or the Metamorphosis, then you read it different, and you're more invested in it, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, no, for sure. But having it being funded by, you know, a public TV station.
Exactly. It was the NDR, the RD at the end of the day. And all the RD stations, which are like 11 or 12, they all financed it together at the end of the day.
Okay. Does that, though, create any restrictions, you know, on how you can tell this story, like the language which you use, the imagery that you use? Was there any kind of, okay, you can make this, David, but let's not do this, or we can't have that in it?
No, there were no restrictions. The only restriction there was Kafka himself, because I think that was what everybody was thinking, that you have to meet the expectations, of course, when you do something about Kafka, that the quality expectations and the competence about his work, but also that it's true, and it has a kind of a quality, because also the formal way how you tell it. And I think that was the spirit of the whole project from the beginning, because otherwise it would be a horror to do it with 12 TV stations, you know. And there was also Daniel Kehlmann who wrote it. He's a very famous writer in Germany, and he has a big competence about writing, and a lot of things that are in the series are about writing itself, about issues of writing, and about issues of Kafka. And Daniel has great talent to make very complicated things sound very easy and very entertaining without losing the depth or the complexity, how you say that, yeah. And that's great, and this is perfect for Kafka, of course, because it is very complex. And so, but it was the hardest thing actually was to do the structure, because how do you tell a life story? A life story doesn't have the same structure as a film, actually. Yeah? A life story doesn't have 3 acts or 3 plot points within 90 minutes, and at the end you have catharsis. It doesn't work like that. Before that happens, you die, probably. So, and how do you tell that? And you have to, it's like a fragment. Life is always fragment. And you have to do a fluid storytelling, and how do you do that if there are so many fragments, and how do you do that in a fluid way? That was, I think, what we talked about the most, actually. And this is also why there is a narrator who always asks, or always says at the end of every episode, we should have started in a different way. We should have started with Felice, and he also changes the perspective, because that's what it is. How do you tell a life story?
Yeah, I mean, it is that thing, right? When you're telling something to a friend, and you'll be like, oh yeah, so the other day, oh, you should have been there, it was so great, so we went to that. Oh no, actually no, because before we did this thing, I should probably start there, because you'll lose the plot if I start there. And yeah, it's hard sometimes to tell those stories, right? So but I think the thing I got, right, was the kind of the complexities of Kafka, right? It seemed that he was very much into following guidance from people, like with the exercise or the chewing and different things like that. So he would take those points and be like, right, no, this person says you should do it like this, and so that's what I'm doing. But then there's that self-doubt, like with the writing, and it's just like, I can't write, you know, it's terrible. I just, and his friend, like, and that's why it's great. Max is, you know, his cheerleader, you know, encouraging him. But you see these interesting sides of Kafka, right? Which, you know, I think, you know, it does a really interesting job of like peeling back these layers.
Yeah, exactly.
You
always, if you do a life story, I mean, you always have to do it, but especially there, you have to identify the nucleus, the core of it. Actually, what is the nucleus of that? What's the nucleus of the friendship of Max and Kafka? What is the nucleus of the relationship of Felice and Kafka? They didn't see each other. They just wrote each other. It's literature. They fell in love like you fall in love with a book. Actually, at the end of the day, you fall in love with the text, and you always have to. Yeah, it's always about the seduction of text. That's it. It's a seducing of writing, actually, with Felice. And what is the nucleus of the family? It's not just the father, it's also the sisters, but it's also his relationship to the whole Jewish family, actually, and which is part of his identity, and he also rejects it, and he has a very difficult, complicated relationship to that, and all those things, and especially his relationship to the insurance company and his work. When he says the work is preventing me from writing, which is not true, because he had so much time, and there were only writers working in the insurance company. They made everything possible for him, and they admired him and said, please write, it's so important you write because you're a big writer. So it's also about what is Kafka telling himself as an excuse of not writing, for example, and what's the truth. And also there you have to find the nucleus of the truth and of the story, and that's the interesting thing about it when you do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what was the collaboration like with Daniel Kehlmann? Like, because you're co-writing on it, so what was that like? How did you work together?
Well, the advantage is that we are very good friends, and we're talking nearly every day anyway. And then we had another issue to talk about, actually, because it was a mission for us to do those Kafka thing like for years now. And there are no vanity issues between us or something like that. So it was always about the better idea or how you do it better, or reminding each other we should do better, we should better, and things like that. So it was a very open and a very great and collaboration because of that, and we had the structure that we had a lot of walks where we talked about the structure of the episodes and what's nucleus and what we really want to tell, and we really structured it together like scene for scene. And then Daniel wrote the dialogues and the scenes, but we always knew what's the nucleus, what is the issue of the scene, and what do we want to tell with the scene, and how will it be told. And it's good to do those things together because it's a very complex issue, and it also wouldn't have been possible without Reiner Stach, we have to say, because he was always there for us. You could call him like 24/7. Even if it's small things, and he read the scripts, and it was not just like making corrections and say this is wrong or this is right. It was also doing suggestions how you could do these scenes in this way, because Kafka wouldn't have done like that. He was not something who fought or was it a quarrel. He was like acting in a different way, so you should write it maybe like that or something like
that. Okay. No, that's interesting. I mean, was there a particular scene or episode that was more difficult to come to terms with, to kind of figure out the approach for?
Well, the main episode probably is the third, where it comes to the family, to the father, to Zionism. It leads to Holocaust and everything, and that was a very complicated episode, but it's also the heart of the series, and that's why it's the third. It's in the middle, actually, because a lot of things coming from there and in his life. And the most complicated episode to write probably was the fifth, because it's completely different from all the other episodes. This is just two people are talking like for 45 minutes walking through a wood. It's very easy for the director, but it's not very easy for the writer. And it's about Milena and Kafka, and it tells the idea was to tell a whole relationship actually within an afternoon. They fall in love, there is compassion, they separate again, they become strangers again. And but everything that we used there was out of letters, actually, between Kafka and Milner, and they were edited to dialogues. Not only Daniel also invented, of course, dialogue, but it was based on those letters, and that was very complicated to write because it's 45 minutes walking through the woods, just talking, and but it's very dramatic at the end of the day.
I wish I could check it out. Did you ever think about dubbing it, doing a dubbed version of the series?
Of course, but that's not in our. We are not the ones who decide that, because it always has something to do with the distributors or the channels, or if they have the money to do that. Or so most of the countries, they are doing subtitles. I think in France, countries like that, or maybe Italy, they are still doing dubbing, but mostly I think series like that subtitled. And because if you go to Netflix, if you see a Spanish show or a Korean, a South Korean show like Squid Game, it's also subtitled, it's not dubbed. But of course, Kafka is a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of talk in Kafka, of course, and it's not easy things, and you have to concentrate a little bit. So I understand what you're saying, but as far as I know, there is no dub version. But at least there are subtitles.
Maybe one day I'll be able to learn the language, and I'll just watch it.
For Kafka, you learn German for Kafka. That's
yes.
But an overachiever.
Oh man, like, what was the casting like for this? Because, you know, I think at the end of the it wasn't at the end of the episode, but I think when I was doing a little bit of research for this, like seeing a picture of Kafka and then seeing oh my gosh, I cannot remember the name of the guy who plays Kafka, but they do look very similar.
Yes, that's the thing about Kafka, because there are not a lot of writers we know how they look like. I mean, who knows how Henry James looked like at the end of the day? But we know how Kafka looked like, because everybody has a photograph of Kafka in mind. And so this was kind of important, of course, this that they look similar, kind of, or there is, But the other thing, and which is even harder to find, is that you find an actor where you believe that he could have written things like that, because nothing is harder to simulate than intelligence. And I think that was very hard, because for a really long time we didn't know who should play Kafka. It was like we already finished like 2 episodes, there were 2 episodes written, and we even didn't know who will play Kafka. But then suddenly UL was appearing like from different sides at the same time within 1 week. It was like Daniel had talks to friends. They said, like directors' friends, did you think about UL Basman? My casting director said, yeah, UL Basman would be. And we knew each other because in another series he had a little part we played. And so we met in Zurich, and we didn't do a casting or something like that. It was just a walk, like a 6 hours walk we did, and talked about a lot of things. And after those 6 hours, I was very sure that Joel Basman will be Kafka, because he founded the Kafka in himself. At the end of 6 episodes, you don't have the feeling that you saw acting or you saw an actor playing Kafka. You have the feeling that you saw Kafka. And that's what it's about, actually.
Well, I kind of feel if anyone is going to give 6 hours to talk about something they don't actually have, that's that's commitment, right? Because if you just didn't care, it's just about it's a paycheck. I don't care. I don't even like Kafka's writing. I'm gonna be like, I do not. It's 20 minutes. I feel I'm gonna go. It's 20. I've been talking and walking for 20 minutes. I'm out of here. So the fact that he walked with you for that long, yeah, that shows a commitment, I feel.
That's true. And the other thing is that it's not necessary you have read Kafka to watch the series. That was also important. That you don't have to know anything about Kafka to enjoy the series, and I think that's also important. But of course, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed, the tone, right, of the episode, the lighting, right, the costumes, just all of these elements really helped set, the feeling of the time, right? It brought you to that period, which made it, you know, interesting. Because sometimes with these things, they can look a bit too shiny, a little bit too modern, but you seem to really get the vibe well.
Yeah, and it was also important for us that in every scene, it's not realistic at the end of the day or naturalistic, but in in every scene you have the feeling that the location is connecting to the literature of Kafka. For example, the office where Max works, it's not a realistic, naturalistic office, but you see people behind him that are looking very similar to him, like a mirror. Yeah. And things like that, or the apartment of the Kafkas. It's a living room in the center of the apartment, and all the rooms are around this center, and from every side someone could come. It's like a stage or something like that. So you would never find an architecture like that when it comes to an apartment. And it always has the connection, or there's a hotel room that's a triangle, for example. So you have always these things. It also could be out of the book of Kafka, actually. And the reality and the fiction are not two different worlds in that series. They are one world.
Was that the kind of, I mean, like, did that kind of idea jump out to you kind of when you were thinking of the show, or was that something that you had to get to? You had to kind of workshop to be like, what's the best way to kind of frame it all?
And I think there was a lot of thinking, not in the writing process, but in the process afterwards. Actually, when I talked to my production designers or to the cameraman or whatever, to my team, we were thinking a lot about how should reality look like in a series when the second level is the literature and the fiction of Kafka that looks like a dream, actually. And there you're telling the connection between those dreams and reality, and it should be one world. And this was a lot of discussion. So, and also we didn't want to make it look like a Kafka cliche itself, like a black and white dark world. That's everybody would expect, because that was not the way we wanted to tell that story. The Kafka apartment, for example, is very light. It's white and green, and it looks like a little bit like a Ingmar Bergman production design, like in Fanny Alexander. It's not dark, it's a very friendly place, actually, and the unfriendly things happening there are coming from the people, not from the place. And this makes something with the atmosphere of a series, and it's kind of a hyper realistic way to do it, I think. So It's not only realistic; it always takes the twist somewhere else. I think a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you said earlier it took 10 years to get this done,
Yes.
right? What kept you going in that time? Because there must have been moments where you kind of maybe doubted that this would get finished, that you'd get to the end. So what was the that driving inspiration for the project?
I had a lot of doubts that it would never be financed. My partner of the company, the production company, he always believed, always said, "You will see, it will be financed one day." And of course, the 100th anniversary, the death day of Kafka, that was, of course, an opportunity to get it financed, because the TV stations needed content with Kafka, and that was the time when the call of NDR, of Christian Gallert, came, and he asked, "I heard you have a Kafka project, and we are very interested in." Which it still made it very difficult to do the financing, because it was not a cheap project, and it's not a very commercial project, of course. And so he had a lot of discussions in his own company. But at the end, it went out well, and we always had the feeling, some kind of, that it will be it will be filmed and it will be done. But of course, especially times when you talk to all the channels in the world, and at the end nobody was left wants to do it, then you think, okay, I think that's dead now. But then always something happens, so you never know.
Yeah, perseverance, man. Perseverance, and you got it done. What has the early reaction been? Because it's been about a week since the show debuted.
Yeah, they did like 2 parts within 1 week. They did the whole show, like on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or something like that, or Sunday. But the critics were very good. I mean, that was the good thing, that everybody was very enthusiastic about the way it's done and about the way it's told, and especially that the public TV is doing projects like that. And that's also very important, because they should keep on doing that, and because that's the reason why they are existing at the end of the day.
It is, but I don't know. There seems to be
How is that in England? Are there a lot of projects like that, or is it?
I feel that there's a lot of reality TV.
Okay.
Right? Every single station has got their own reality, like versions of reality TV shows. That seems to be a big driving force where, as you said, like back in the day, because it's interesting, this is showing on channel ITV here. And I think it's IT, or is it Channel 4?
It's Channel 4.
Channel 4, yes. Yes, no, that's right. Because Channel 4, when that station started, because for ages we only had 3 channels, right?
Yeah.
And then there was this big thing, be like, oh, the 4th channel is coming. And it's just like, oh my God, we're getting another channel. And it was like these kind of really hard edge documentaries, these in-depth shows that would break down certain aspects or talk about things that other stations weren't talking about. But in recent years, Channel 4 has devolved into this asinine reality TV. So it's interesting that they've picked up Kafka, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like going back to the roots of the station,
That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, there are stations that, there are still good documentaries and things that crop up every now and again, but it doesn't seem as, prevalent as it was a few years back,
Yes. Yes. I understand. It's interesting that the reality shows are still so popular, aren't they? Because at the beginning, like 20 years ago, I understood there were the strikes also, and the writers' strike, and this is the
Mm.
reason why all this reality show things happened. But maybe it has something to do with how we live, like with social media or something like that. That you want to see your own life, kind of, and it's also a narcissistic thing. Maybe, I don't know. But what do you think? Why is it so successful, the reality TV thing?
I mean, I think it's cheaper, right?
Yeah,
It's cheaper to make. So,
of course.
you can turn out several seasons of, a show like Big Brother, or, Married at First Sight or something. You can churn those out
Yeah,
quicker than, doing like, let's say, a 5-season Kafka series. That's going to take time to put together, and the costs for locations and costumes, and after the first season's success, the actors now want more money, and so it's these rising costs. So
yeah,
the networks are like, you know what, let's just make all of these reality shows because it's just cheaper and we can do it quick. But the irony of it, I feel, that once a camera's involved, it's no longer reality TV,
yeah,
because
of
the
course.
people know they're being filmed, so they're acting in a way that isn't natural,
Yes.
right? So you've lost. I think the only thing that was probably reality TV were like the first season of The Real World, the first season of Big Brother, like those kind of things were because no one really knew what it was,
Yeah,
right? So the people involved were just like, I mean, what are we doing? And then, yeah, they probably did forget the cameras were there.
yeah. At the moment when you
And
see the first season, you know how to behave
yes,
there and how to
exactly.
act there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So then it just all becomes a caricature of what it is. Like, there's all of these dating shows, like
yeah,
First Dates. And I remember watching early seasons of First Dates, and it felt like these people were actually looking for someone, right? They were looking for love. But I tried to watch some episodes recently, and it just feels like people want to be on TV,
yeah.
you know?
Exactly. They want to be famous. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
which is
they're
just
pretending something that's not true, and you feel that it's not true, of course.
yeah. So it's a shame that
But it still works for the public. I mean, for the audience, because they're still very popular. So even the twist that you feel it's not reality anymore, what you see, because it's another kind of reality. Because you see they pretend to do something to be famous or to be on TV, and they pretend they're looking for a partner. They pretend. That's how I live when I am in a container, like in a Big Brother or whatever. The public, the audience can also live with the simulation of that, because they know what's the deal, and they want to see what the people are doing to be famous, probably, or something like that.
mm, well, I think it's the way you craft it, right? Because it's broken down and edited in a way to kind of show scandal and shock. Right.
Yes.
So then the stations will put out clips on social media, and it looks like there's an argument coming, or someone did something outrageous. And so people are like, oh my God, did you see what Stephanie did? Oh, can you believe that? It's like Stephanie didn't really do anything. It's just the way it was all cut
You just have the
together.
expectations she will do something, but then nothing
Yes.
happens mostly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It will be cut like, oh my God, what's going to happen next episode? And you'll be like, oh, nothing happened. It's like when you watch MasterChef, and they'll cut it in a way that they'll say, wait, have you got that in the oven yet? And they'll be like, no, I better do it now. And then be like, there's 5 minutes left. And you're just thinking, well, that's never going to cook. And then they like, oh, bring your food up. And and it's, oh, that's perfect. So you're like, so obviously that when they spoke, they had that conversation. That was ages ago. That wasn't with 5 minutes left. Otherwise, that wouldn't have cooked, you know?
But it's interesting that they are doing promises they don't keep at the end of the day, but nobody is pissed off and they watch again the next episode. That's also an interesting phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it really is, because I think there was a time
You
when
create kind of a hunger feeling or something like that. And nothing comes on the table, but the same thing happens at the next episodes. And it's like a mechanic, like a
yes, it's weird, but maybe it's programming, right?
yes.
It could be because when you think about it, you know, like with politics, people go on a platform of, oh, we're going to reform this, we're going to invest, we'll put money into health, we'll put money into education. They never do it. But then then those same statements are made for the next term, the next elections, and people are like, oh, they're going to do this thing, and they go, okay, and then they never do it, right? So it's kind of like we're being programmed. You know, the TV is reflecting the politics and just this way of putting things out there with no return.
Absolutely, that's true. That's very true.
It's very odd. It's very odd.
Yeah,
but at least, David, shows like Kafka can still be made.
That's
right.
true.
Which I do feel this is a really great example of that, because, you know, I think we got to a point where it seemed that the big shows, the real shows that kind of resonated with people were on streaming networks. You know, like everyone's watching things like Succession and Game of Thrones and you know, the one about oxes and I think it was on Hulu and Disney, right? But we got those kind of shows, those big shows, those hard-hitting shows seem to just be on streamers. So it's with this, it's kind of showing that no, public TV can still do things, can still put out great content. Yeah. So I think
content only public TV stations can do, because if you would have done it on Netflix, for example, or something like that, you would have changed Kafka into a profiler or something like that. He's not allowed to stay Kafka himself. It has to be a crime, or it has to be anything like that. Or Kafka the escape room or something like
that. Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah. Oh man, but no, it's fantastic what you've done. It's fantastic what you've done, David. You and Daniel have really put something special together. But yeah, like, what's next? Where do you go from after putting something like this out? What do you do next?
I did a very, 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 very small miniseries with 6 episodes that are kind of short films, actually. And every episode is just in one room with 3 actors. So it's the complete opposite of Kafka, which felt very good. It was very free and very jazzy, kind of. And next week, gonna do, I'm doing a project in Canada probably. And then I continue my collaboration with Daniel, and there's a big novel he wrote about the director Pabst. He was in the 30s in Germany. He immigrated to America, and he was probably the only director who went back to the Nazis and worked there again. So it's about his life, actually, the novel, and we tried to make a film out of it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that sounds yeah, that sounds intriguing. I mean, will it be English language, David? Are you gonna try and make me do more subtitles? Like,
Yeah,
what do you do?
Canadian project is in English at least, so there you don't need any subtitles. And I
Okay.
promise you, in the film with Daniel, there are not so many dialogues like in Kafka.
Okay. All right. That's great. That's great. Because, you know, I've enjoyed this conversation. So it'd be good to talk about your future projects when they're ready. But yeah, you're not going to kill my eyes. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. No, I really appreciate your time, David. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much. Now, so how can people let people know how they can find Kafka, and how can they follow what you're doing?
Well, Kafka you will find on Channel 4 Walters in England, on Chiflix in America. You can also buy it on Amazon. There is a DVD coming out in 2 or 3 weeks, I think, and you can also download it there, probably with English subtitles. And I don't know where you can find me. With every project somewhere else, I guess. So there's the World Wide Web. You can watch out.
Do you do you have an Instagram or an
No,
X or
no,
Facebook?
I'm nowhere. I'm not in social media.
Ah, right. You're a
Yes.
social media nomad.
Yeah, yeah. I've been there till 2014, but the night when Trump was voted, I went out and I never regretted it.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know, living through your work, you've got a lot of work, so there's a lot of living to be done, so people can follow you in that way, which is still great. It's
And they
still great.
shouldn't follow me, they should follow the work. That's the most interesting thing, maybe. But the other thing is very boring. So,
I'm not sure about that, David. I'm not sure about that. One quick thing before I let you go. With the DVD,
mhm.
is there any bonus features? Do you have any commentary tracks or anything like that?
As far as I know, there is making of material there. There's an interview with Daniel and me, but there's no audio comment of Kafka. I don't know why, because they didn't want to do that probably. So
That's a shame. That's a shame.
it's not
Yeah.
not more talking about it. It's so much talk anyway.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, David, this has been fantastic.
Thank
It's
you.
been a joy.
For me
Thank you
as well.
so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
For me too.
Well, people, go watch Kafka, right? You know what I mean? There's no excuses. You can find it, you know, Channel 4 in the UK, Charlie Fix in the States, RFT, RFT. Oh, God damn it. What's the station in Germany and Austria?
ARD. It's also ARD. So that's how it is.
Right. So
ARD.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah. You
a
can
big
watch it there, people. So yeah, go check out Kafka, and we look forward to seeing what you have coming next, and what Daniel has coming next. You know,
yeah.
your future collaborations, and remember, when you're ready to put them out in the world, the door is open. Please come and let's have another conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I would be very happy about that.
Tremendous. Well, have a great rest of your day, David.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
All right.
So
Take it
see
easy,
you
my friend.
soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.